We saw how Jordan and Steph played together last night. It was almost like, okay, this is not the best comparison, but remember when Steph and KD were playing, it was like, okay, Steph's going to get his next play. KD gets his, then Steph, then KD, and they would cook in that way. That sort of felt like last night. Steph would get his, then boom, Jordan would get his. I wonder if you got to bring Klay off the bench. And what you would do is you would have DiVincenzo, whose whole thing is about getting people involved. Unlike Poole, that's why he was playing well with Poole, because Poole can get his still because DiVincenzo is setting things up. You have Wiseman, Klay, DiVincenzo, and then you're probably having to play Lamb or Kuminga in that spot, unless Andre comes back, which it sounds like you were right last week, that it sounds like he's like not anywhere close. But what do you think about that? Because Draymond made a comment after the Sacramento game, and he said that the second team plays too much like the first team because Poole and Curry play similarly. So if Poole goes off, it's great. But if he struggles, that's when they're giving up leads. So what do you think about making a change and having Klay play the 6-man role instead of Jordan?
I think on paper, it makes so much sense. And I feel like any other team would probably make the move. But I feel like with Poole, it's not necessarily that he needs to start to play well. I feel like it's more, he just needs more minutes with like Steph and Dre to play well. So I don't know. It's just like the Warriors are really good. I've said this in the past. They're really good about showing that a demotion isn't a demotion. Wiseman to the G League isn't a demotion. Poole to the bench. Steph
it's kind of a demotion, though.
This is a demotion.
We're
like,
trying to
really
shine a turd here. It feels very much like a demotion.
Yeah, it really is a demotion. But I just think if you stick the course and stay with Klay, like that pays off longer in the long term. Like Poole will figure it out. I'm convinced he will, because I don't think it's a starter bench thing. I think for him, it really is just getting the right minutes with the right people.
Okay, and then, but what about the Draymond comment that the first team and the second team play too similarly?
Is that like that much of a bad thing? I know with personnel, like the second team obviously doesn't have the personnel that the first team has, but I mean, if we go by your what you mentioned last week with your rotations, like there's a good amount of starters that are in the second unit.
And that would be the flip side, right? Which is to kind of pair guys together or pair units together a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I think all that stuff should be on the table, though, because you mentioned this in a podcast probably a couple weeks ago now, where Steph Curry set the tone by coming off the bench in the playoffs last year, basically saying, if I can come off the bench, anybody can come off the bench. Andre Iguodala's Warriors career, well, he was a starter before. Was he a starter? Did he
start on Denver?
No, yeah, he was. He was a starter on Denver and Philly. But when the Warriors drafted Harrison.
Yeah, that's a good question.
He was starting because I believe Harrison was coming off the bench because that was the Mark Jackson year. The first Steve Kerr year when they win the title, Harrison starts and Iguodala comes off the bench. And so his whole career as a champion starts by being a team player. And Andre will tell you that he's not happy. He wasn't happy. He did it because it was best for the team, but he always saw himself as a starter. So I just wonder if we're at that point, and if Klay, because Sacramento game, Klay shot a little bit better, but he was still hunting for shots. He's hunting to get hot. Like he's trying to catch fire, and he's hunting for shots, and he's pulling up so early on the shot clock. I just feel like if you kind of put the ball in his hands a little bit more on that second team, and you go, dude, you're the top priority here offensively. He doesn't have to throw it up like it's a time bomb, because with Steph is cooking, and he's like, oh man, Steph is cooking. I'm gonna have to get a shot up here, or else I may not get a shot. Or I don't know what he's thinking, but that's just what it looks like, right? Because Steph has been so great, and you want that usage with Steph to be up because he's so efficient right now, and Klay isn't. So I don't know. I think it's just an option. I'm sure the Warriors coaching staff is looking at everything.
Yeah.
I'm sure Klay's mental state and his emotional state is part of that thing. He was with Run TMC last night, and Tim Hardaway
God
made a
dang it.
very interesting comment that I think was meant to kind of give Klay a kick in the butt a little bit.
I know what you're. Yep, I know exactly.
I don't
what
think
you
Klay took it that way though, but he was like, "Klay, tell me if I'm wrong here. It seems like you're 100%, but you just need to play like you're 100%, and you're still building back up to that. Like physically, you're telling yourself that your leg's not hurt and you're 100%." And he meant it as a compliment, but in this like kind of tough love Tim Hardaway kind of way. And I started laughing because I was like, oh, I know where this is coming. Tim is a point guard. Tim is a bulldog. Tim is a team leader. Tim sees the same stuff that we see, but at the same time, he knows that what Tim is trying to do, Tim is trying to unlock the greatness in Klay, right? That's what Draymond is trying to do. That's what Steph is trying. They're just trying to unlock it. And so Tim was given a little bit of tough love, and Klay was like, he didn't know how to answer it. He just like, thanks. Yeah, I feel 100%. And then they just moved on.
Yeah.
So I like there's something there. And I know he had a quote that I sent you and Ben earlier where I was like, I wouldn't have answered it like that. You know, he seems to be reading the Twitter sphere and reading Warriors Twitter and, you know, responding to the you know, to Sam and Andy and their crew about how poorly he's playing. And really what he's doing is he's not playing within the flow of the game. And I think it's hurting the team. And then on the other side, we've seen the defensive thing where the other team's just like, we're just attacking this guy. Like Kevin Huerter's like, Klay's on me? Yes. And they're like, who would have thought that, right? 2 or 3 years ago, Kevin Huerter would have been like, man, can Steph guard me? Like, at least I have a little bit of height on him.
Yep.
So, I mean, do you see any other solutions to the current lineup problems to unlock Klay or to unlock Jordan? Because that's the other thing, right? Is Jordan has not been great either. And then he was great last night when he was able to start, and it was and Klay wasn't there. And Klay was even like, man, Jordan's so fast. Like Klay was giving props to all the things about Jordan that Klay is not good at, which I thought was very interesting. Oh man, look, Jordan go for 40. I was like, yeah, he might go for 40. I was like, wow, that must have been tough for him watching this dude who could like he wants to replace him, right? Like that's kind of his ultimate goal is to be the starting guard on the Warriors. But
I think his ultimate goal is to replace Steph.
Maybe. I don't know.
That's like I feel like that's that mindset he has. The sky's the limit. But I mean, you could tell. I think Klay's totally going through it. Like his not Aisha, sorry. Sonia, that's Steph's mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
She even like responded to like one of those Warriors pages on Instagram, like Warriors Talk or something on Instagram, who posted that Barkley quote and was like, Klay, you know, you've always been so and so. Don't listen to them. Like, I think everyone knows he's like a little emotional about it right now, and I totally understand why. Like, I think I told you when I came over and watched the SAC game that you know he literally drove to Oracle after a bad game by him that they lost, and was like said something like, "Oh man, like these were the times," or something like that. Like, who does that?
Yeah.
Who goes from Chase to Oracle? That's kind of a drive, you know, maybe 30 minutes. Actually, how long is that? As Chase to
from
Oracle,
Chase to Oracle? Oh yeah, probably
30
about
minutes.
That.
Yeah. I mean, he just did it. I mean, you know, so I think that there should be a way where maybe you demote him, but like really say that, like, you can't say it's not a demotion. He knows it's a demotion, but like say like, dude, we're just doing this to get you going and trying to unlock you, and then you're back in the starting lineup once you're unlocked.
Mm-hmm. But is it good to pogo Jordan?
Jordan's 23. Like Klay is going to have a statue at Chase. You know, like if you really are gonna be like, this is the move that if we don't make, we're not gonna win a championship. Like we have no chance of winning a championship. Then obviously do it. But like I don't think that's the case here. I think Jordan if you look at the rotations, like even though Jordan doesn't start, he's the first one off the bench taking Klay out within like 5 minutes
5 minutes, I could do it a 5
right?
minute thing. Yeah.
Like he's basically a starter in that sense. So I don't know. Jordan just needs to get cooking with Steph. Like what happens, I think you have the starting lineup, Jordan comes in, and then you do the Steph, your turn, my turn, and then Jordan's going. He's already warm and hot by the time the reserves are in, and then he could just, like just do what he did against the Spurs, but it's like you just come in 5 minutes later. But I mean, I would be on board with the temporary demotion. But Klay's just Klay, man. I'm just always going to root for that guy.